Father Jim, there's another issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I know it's near and dear to yours too. When I was in Jesuit Volunteer Corps, I worked in refugee resettlement. I know you spent some time in East Africa, and it pains me that immigrants and refugees are demonized and they're seen as the other, often by people that call themselves Christians. So how can we as Christians, as Franciscans, as Franciscan-hearted people, welcome the stranger, and especially in this time when we're not maybe having a lot of sense of community?
Well, I think that's a good point. And by the way, I agree with every single thing Jeannie said about the vaccines. Vaccines save life. Vaccines are pro-life.
Amen.
Amen. And I do want to say that the Holy Father has also said there's no moral reason why not to get it. There's nothing preventing anyone from getting it morally. Yeah, as you say, I worked with refugees for 2 years, and they are considered as other. And I think there are a couple things going on. One, I think that people see them as a category, right? So there's just this massless, faceless mob of refugees, and so they're kind of distant from them. But I think when you recognize that they are people really just like ourselves, with some cultural differences and language differences, they are just like ourselves. I want to tell you a story that I always like to tell people. The very first refugee I met, this was in 1992 in East Africa, at an office in Nairobi. And JRS, the Jesuit Refugee Service, was running an intake program for the UN. I know that's a little strange, but we were doing the intake interviews for people that had just come at the time from Somalia. So people who are a little older will remember the crisis in Somalia. And this guy who was really sort of ill, sort of, disheveled and ill-clad, as you would imagine a refugee would be, sat down in the office in front of me. I will never forget this. And I think this is what I really want to say. I think most of us, if we're honest, think, well, refugees in Africa, and you see them crossing the desert, you say, well, they're kind of used to that. Right? I mean, that's, they live outside and they're kind of used to that. Or you see people in Central America kind of huddling in the rain, and they say, well, I wouldn't be able to do that, but they're probably used to that, right? So there's a sort of diminution of compassion. So I'm speaking to this man, I'll never forget it, and his name was Ali. And I said to him, I had studied Swahili for a couple of months, and I said somewhat patronizingly in Swahili, what language would you like to speak in? And he said, in perfect English, well, we can speak in English. I thought, well, that's good. Or we can speak in Swahili, or we can speak in Arabic, or we can speak in French, or we can speak in Italian. He was a professor of philosophy at the University of Mogadishu. And I think at that moment, I realized this guy is more educated than I am, and he was not used to being on the road and living in the bush and living in a refugee camp. He would have been as uncomfortable as Jeannie or Jason or me. This was a sophisticated person. Now, I'm not saying we only help refugees because they're rich or sophisticated. I'm saying that these people are just like us. These are our brothers and sisters. And so when we think about what it would be like for us to be on the run, or for us to be on the run from gangs in Central America, or just looking for a new life for their families. I mean, people don't become refugees, unless they have to. So I think when you break down those ideas that these are just kind of a mob of people, and that these are individuals, these are beloved children of God, this is part of Pope Francis's culture of encounter, coming to know them as individuals. Now, you say, well, I can't get to know them as individuals. I don't live in East Africa. I don't live in, on the border, or maybe you do live on the border in Texas, but I don't see them. But you can read about them, you can listen to their stories, and you can make the sort of imaginative leap to say that these people are just like me, right? In many ways, in terms of wanting family, wanting care, wanting a home. And I think that really goes a long way. And if that fails, then you need to just think about your Christian duty. And Jesus says, when you welcome the stranger, you welcome me. It's pretty simple. And I'm always amazed that Christians can overlook that. It's just as simple as caring for the sick and caring for the poor. I mean, Jesus couldn't be any clearer. But I think in terms of changing hearts, what happens is understanding them as individuals, especially with families.